engeziwe ukunisiza ukuba niphumelele kwizivivinyo zenu enizozibhala maduzane nje. Sinothisha abanethulela izifundo zika-Grade 12 zonke izinsuku kusukela ngoMsombuluko kuze kube yiSonto. Zithokozeleni lezi zifundo, nisithumelele imibuzo lapho nidinga khona usizo.
Sanibonani bafundi, uMisithelezi wenzisa i-tourism.
Today, we are going to focus on Times 1's work. The topic that we'll be dealing with is the world time zone. So we will be looking at the introduction to a world time zone map. We will also look at calculation of world time zone when traveling. Let's get on with it. In order to be able to answer questions on this topic, there are some concepts that one needs to be able to explain. For example, what is a time zone? How is time zone map designed to help one calculate a time? The concepts of daylight saving time, the impact that time zone and daylight having time have on travel planning and traveling, how one calculates the time differences between different countries of the world, the impacts of crossing over time zones when traveling. So that will be your jet lag and jet fatigue. There are some concepts or terms that you will come across when we deal with this topic. Your concepts like the lines of latitude, the lines of longitude, the time zones, universal time coordinate, hemispheres, equator, at rotation, at a revolution, standard time, local time, international dateline, your 24-hour clock, your daylight saving time. In order to be able to understand this topic, you must be able to explain these concepts. Let us start with the time zone itself. So when we talk of the time zone, we're talking about the division of the world by the lines of longitude into 24 time zone. These are time zones. They are about 15 degrees wide, which represent an hour each. So each time zone is 1 hour. So that is why we have our 24-hour clock. So what you must know about each time zone is that it observes a clock time 1 hour earlier than the time zone immediately to the east. For example, if at 15 degrees it's 1 o'clock, then it means that at 30 degrees it's 2 o'clock. So that is why they say that they observe a clock time 1 hour earlier than the zone immediately to the east. So there are some countries like the USA that their lines are usually drawn to follow the state, like the national landmarks or even country lines. So some countries are split into two by time zones, but time zone boundaries, they can be legislated at different levels of the government. Some countries, they are cut into two by time zones. Here in South Africa, we observe one, which is 15 degrees east. 15 degrees east, meaning we are on the eastern side. That is our time zone. But others, they have more than one, like Australia, they have about 3 time zones. Another concept that you will come across is the lines of latitude and longitude. Also, these are imaginary lines. When we talk of the lines of latitude, we're talking about the lines that run from east to west. And then when you talk of the lines of longitude, these are also imaginary lines that runs from north to south. We have the universal time coordinate. We say it's a UTC. So time is taken from 0 degrees. The universal time coordinate is at the 0 degree line of longitude. So this line of longitude runs through the town Greenwich, which is near London. So it is also known as the Greenwich Meridian or the Prime Meridian. So if they say it's the Greenwich Meridian or the Prime Meridian, that's all referring to the universal time coordinates. Then we have hemispheres as a half of a sphere. Earth is divided into two hemispheres. We have the northern and also we have the southern hemisphere. They are divided by the line of which is the equator, which is the line of latitude, and it is a 0 degrees line. Then we have an equator itself. It divides the northern and the southern hemisphere. The equator, it's a 0 degrees line. It is imaginary line. As I've said, it is a line of latitude and it divides the two hemispheres into north and the south. We have the earth rotation. When we talk of rotation, there is a difference between the rotation and the revolution. Earth rotation, it is a spinning movement of the earth on its own axis. So rotation, it takes 24 hours. That gives you a day. With revolution, it's different. As I've said, rotation, the earth spin on its axis, where with revolution, it's a movement of earth around the sun. And it takes about 364 quarter days. That gives you a year. And revolution gives us seasons. So you must be able to differentiate those. Rotation, it gives us day and night, where the revolution would give us the 4 seasons that we have. Then we have the standard time. When we talk of the standard time, this is a uniform time used by countries in the same time zones. So the countries that are within 15 degrees east, then they will use same time. So if South Africa is, let me take South Africa. South Africa is 30 degrees east. So if there is another country that observes the 30 degrees east, they will also have the same time as South Africa. We have the local time. So when we talk of the local time, it refers to the geographical time of place according to the position of the sun. We have the international date line. So when we talk of the international date line, so this line is found at 180 degrees line of longitude. There are numerous zigzags along its path from north to the south. It avoids land to prevent confusion by dividing a town or country into two. That is why it is a zigzag. One either gains or loses a day depending in which direction one is coming from when crossing the international date line. Countries on the west of the international date line, they are 1 day ahead, and those of the eastern side. Then we have another concept that one will come across is your 24-hour clock. So the one that we use in order to calculate time differences. When we talk the 24-hour clock, why do we use this one? We use this clock to prevent confusion with mornings and afternoon. the idea of using AM and PM is no longer in use. We must know that. So, in your final exam paper, you will find a 24-hour clock. So, you will be given a 24-hour clock. So, to avoid confusion between the AM and also the PM. And we have the daylight saving time. When we talk of the daylight saving time, this is a process of advancing clocks 1 hour ahead in summer months. Mind you, this only happened in summer months. So when, as in summer, some countries, they will opt to use the daylight saving time. So it's when they advance their clock 1 hour ahead. Many countries, they have adopted this concept of the daylight saving time, in short, which is the DSTV. I mean, not the DSTV, which is the DST. For example, UK, Australia, South Africa, they do not practice the daylight saving time. Okay. Why this country opt to use opt to practice the daylight saving time? It's for economic reason. That's the reason. But then it has its benefit. So, many countries in the world, for economic reason, they will adjust their watch or their standard time in summer month. As I've said, for economic reason. So this is just a temporal change in the country's standard time. As I've said, clock are set 1 hour forward in spring or summer, and then 1 hour in autumn to take advantage of the available natural light in the summer months. What are the benefits of this? Number one, when you practice daylight saving time, it saves on electricity usage, extra time for leisure activities, decrease in crime, recreational areas and tourism establishment, they'll also make money, fewer traffic accidents as people will travel while there is light, and also more time to spend with their families. So that is why some countries prefer to advance their clocks in summer months. Moving on, before I go to calculation, I just want to be done with all the concept, and then we'll deal with the calculation at the later stage. The impact of time zone on travel planning and also traveling. So we all know that time is very important part of a tourist travel, both during the initial planning stages and well as during their actual journey. So it is important that you plan carefully regarding the impact of time, so that it will determine if the tourist will have smooth journey or not. So why is this important? Knowing which time zone they are traveling to will help them to understand whether daylight saving time will impact their travel plans or even on their health related issues. For example, if one is required to take medication at a certain time, the DST will alter this pattern of taking medication. Also, the business will need to determine their arrival times at that destination. For example, If they are arriving outside the normal business hours, they will need to make their own arrangements to be picked from airport and transported to their accommodation. Also, what we must know is that crossing time zone, it affects sleep, body temperature, alertness, cognitive performances, digestion, and even hormone. So, as I've said, this is called a jet lag. Being familiar with time zone of a destination that you plan on traveling to will also help you with practical issues such as what to pack, because the time zone can tell you the season and possible climatic condition. It also can also help you to plan the type of transport you will need depending on the arrival times at the destination. It also helps one plan their daily activities, especially if the country is practicing daylight saving time. The next concept I would like us to get to before the calculation is the jet lag and the jet fatigue. There is a difference between the two. Let us start with the jet lag. Jet lag, this is a physical condition a traveler experiences when crossing many time zones. It is not a sickness. It is a physical condition that a traveler will experience when crossing many time zones. Why? The body's clock goes out of its routine. The body's natural cycle is upset. Body processes and time are no longer correspond with each other. So it is a physical condition. It is not a sickness. I would like to stress that one. It is a physical condition. It is a condition. It is not a sickness. Then we have a jet fatigue. When we talk of jet fatigue, it is mainly a tiredness, disorientation, and headaches. Jet fatigue can occur even if one does not cross many time zones. So if you're traveling for longer hours, you are bound to have a jet fatigue. It is caused mainly by changes in your routine, spending long hours in a cramped seat, unable to move out. So that is a jet fatigue. So when you're traveling using the modern jet, you are likely to have a jet fatigue. So for you, you don't need to cross time zone in order to experience the jet fatigue. But with the jet lag, when you cross many time zones, you will have a physical condition, which is the jet lag. What are the symptoms of jet lag? Interrupted sleep, getting upset or getting angry, indigestion, loss of appetite, diarrhea, difficult concentrating or feeling disorientated, even the muscle soreness. So those are the symptoms of a jet lag. What you must know, there are some things that you can do to minimize jet lag. Jet lag cannot be prevented, but there are ways to reduce its effect. One has to know that one. You cannot prevent jet lag, but you can minimize its effect. There are some things that you need to do before, during, and even after flight. You need to drink plenty of liquids, especially water. Avoid caffeine and alcohol. You need to rest before the flight, during the flight, and even after flight. And the flight, use sleep aids such as earplug, neck, and also even the neck rest. So, not medication or anything, but try to use these ones. As I've said, avoid caffeine, coffee, alcohol. You need to avoid those ones. Walk around the cabin area to stretch your arms and leg. Also, with the eating, you need to be cautious. Do not eat too much. Not necessarily to eat all meals that are offered. So, when you're in the plane, there is no need for you to eat too much. I think that is all that you need to know regarding the concepts that goes with the time zone. So now I would like us to move on and look at calculations. So calculations, they confuse everyone. I'll try to explain this and maybe you'll see where you get it wrong. We are going to look at calculation of world times when traveling between the countries. So what you need to note about the calculation, you will have the flying time. You will also have the DST. So that is very, very important. I'm gonna give out steps on how to calculate the time differences. I have few, but then maybe you'll understand in different ways. When calculating time zone problems, you will need to have a time zone map, a world time zone map. So luckily, in your exam paper, you will be given a time zone map. As I've said before, a 24-hour clock. 24-hour clock is very, very important when calculating the time zone. You don't need a calculator. When we do the calculation, you won't need a calculator. So your world time zone map and the 24-hour clock, that will be provided in the exam paper. So there are steps that one needs to follow when calculating the time zone. Number one, you will be given a scenario. What must you do with the scenario? You write down all the given information. That was number one. So you write all the given information. So you read the scenario, all the information that is given, you need to write it down, break it down. Number two, find out if the two places are in the same hemisphere or the different hemispheres. So in this case, we use the east and the western side. So we'll deal with those. So we don't use the northern and the southern hemisphere. We deal with the east and the western part. And there is a rule of what you need to do. Add or subtraction. For example, if countries are on the same side of the universal time coordinate, if countries in question are on the same side, it's either eastern part or western part. So if they're on the same side, for example, we're talking about Australia and South Africa, they're on the eastern part, they're on the same side. What do? You subtract. I'll tell you what is it that you subtract. And then, if they're on the different part, one country is on the eastern side, the other country is on the western side, then you add. Same, plus, minus. Different, add. That's the rule. So if the two countries which are in question are on the same side, you minus or you subtract. But if they are on the different parts, you add. Number 3, start with the place in the question. Start with the place which is in question. So you start with what you know. Give its location in relation to the known place. If the place in question is in the east of a known place. So if they are asking, if the place they are asking time from is in the place, as in the east of the known place, you will add. If the place in question is west of a known place, then you subtract. I'll tell you more when we deal with a certain calculation. If there is a flying time, depending on what the question is asking, you will add. And if there is a DST, you will add where it's applicable. It's either you add or you minus where it is applicable. As I've said, rules to follow. I'm going to try and explain in different ways. You use the 24-hour clock. You use the world time zone map. Steps, all places that are in the east are ahead. So what you need to know, as I've said, we deal with the western part and the eastern part, the eastern part. So all places that are in the east of the universal time coordinate, which is the 0 degrees, are ahead. So the sign that we use for those places that are in the east, we use the plus sign. And all the places to the west of the universal time coordinate, or the green, which mean time, are behind. To show that a country is behind, we use the minus sign. Plus for east or ahead, minus for behind or west. Okay. We use the plus and the minus sign, as I've said, to indicate that a country is either ahead or behind. It does not refer to negative or positive as in mathematics. So within within the calculations, we do not say the place is positive or the place is negative as it is done in mathematics. We have the ahead and the behind. The minus refers to the country is behind. Plus refers to the country is ahead. Let me explain again. When two countries are situated, it's either east or west side of the prime meridian. You must always subtract the two time zone because the places are close by. You will only add the two time zone if one country is situated in the east and the other one is in the west because they are far apart from each other. At time, you must work with two countries or two places. So, when calculating the time zone, we deal with two places at the time. sure there's another way to explain. We haven't done the calculation, but we're still explaining how to do the calculations. What are the rules to follow when dealing with the calculation? Let me try another way, but it's the same as what I have said. You need to locate the place. Firstly, you use your 24-hour clock, and also you use the world time zone map. For example, let us calculate the arrival time, or let us determine the time difference between the two countries. We have South Africa. As I've said, South Africa is 30 degrees east, meaning it is 2 hours ahead. Then let's take New York. New York is on the western part, which is 70 degrees west, which is -5 hours from the universal time coordinate. We need to find the time difference between the two countries. How many hours separate New York and South Africa? That is what they're asking. If they say, find the time difference between the two countries. Remember the rule. If countries are on the same side of the universal time coordinate, we minus because they're close by. But then, if the countries are on different parts, we add because they are far apart. So, we have South Africa, which is 30 degrees east or +2. We have the New York, which is 75 degrees west or -5. What we need to deal with is the hours, the time differences. New York is -5. South Africa is +2. We want to find out what is the time difference between the two countries. How many hours separate New York and South Africa? Okay. Rule number 1, we have located the two countries. It's South Africa, which is +2, and we have New York, which is -5. What is the rule? The rule says, different parts, you add. So we have two countries on different parts. The other one is in the western, the other one is in the eastern part. We are going to add the time difference. The other one is 5 hours, the other one is 2 hours. So we're going to say 5 hours plus 2, and then it will give you 7 hours. As I've said, forget the minus and the plus, or the positive or the negative. We don't do that in the calculations. So we only take the numbers, and mind you, these are hours. So the time difference between New York and South Africa is 7 hours. That is the first step. You find the time difference. Moving on. This one is simple. Let me do a calculation. Pindi is traveling from Johannesburg, which is 30 degrees east. She is traveling to New York, which is 75 degrees west. His flight will leave the OR Tambo International Airport at 1700 hours. on the 12th of June. What time will she arrive in New York? That is simple. That is a simple one. If she leaves South Africa at 1700, what time will she arrive in New York? So let's go back to the steps that we have talked about. Number 1, we need to locate the two countries. So we have located the two countries. So the information that we are given, we've been given the New York, we have been given South Africa, we've been given 1700 here in South Africa. The first step, we need to locate the two countries. We have South Africa, which is plus 2 hours, and we have New York, which is minus 5 hours. The rule says if the countries are on the different parts, we add. So we need to find the time difference between the two countries. So we'll have 5 plus 2, and then it will give you 7 hours, meaning the time difference between South Africa and New York is 7 hours. Okay, we have done with that part. The next part, or the next step, we have the 1700 hours that we were told that she left the OR International Airport at. What is it that we're going to do with these 1700 hours? It's very easy. We already know what time did she leave South Africa at. It was 1700. So we have 1700. We need to find out in which side is she going to. Is she going to the country that is ahead, or is she going to the country that is ahead? So we all know that we have South Africa, which is plus, and we have New York, which is behind. So she's leaving South Africa, that is ahead at 1700, and she's going backwards, or she's going to the country that is behind. Johannesburg is in the eastern side, and New York is in the western part. So what we're going to do, since she's going to the country that is behind, we said in order to show that a country is behind, we use the minus sign. It means that we are going to use the minus sign. But where are we going to put this minus sign? Remember the 1700, the time that she left South Africa. So we will have 1700 hours. Because she is going to the country that is behind, we are going to say minus. But what is it that we are minusing? We are minusing the time difference between the two countries. We said the difference between South Africa and New York is 7 hours. Meaning, we're going to say 1700 minus 7 hours. You don't need the calculator. We're not going to say 17 minus 7. But then we're going to use our 24-hour clock. Then we're going to say 16, 15, 13, 12. 11, 10, 9, meaning she will arrive at or in New York at 9 hours, at 9 o'clock New York time. If she leaves South Africa at 1700 and the time difference between the two countries is 7 hours, she will arrive in New York, which is behind, at 9 hours. So that is the time difference between the two countries, is 7 hours. Let us spice it more. Let's say the flight from South Africa to New York, it took about 16 hours. It took about 16 hours to reach the New York. What you must know is that when you calculate the arrival time, you will add the flying time. When you calculate the arrival time, if there is a flying time or there is elapsed time, you need to add that to your answer. So, we've been told that if she leave South Africa at 1704 and travel, and the time difference is 7 hours, then she'll arrive in New York at 10 o'clock. But the flight took about 16 hours, 30 minutes. What we need to do when we calculate arrival time, you add the flying time. Then you'll have 10 o'clock plus 16 hours and 30 minutes. You add that one. So 2 o'clock plus, it's 10 o'clock plus 16 hours and 30 minutes. It will give you 2:30 on the 13th of June. So you need to add the 16 hours and 30 minutes to the time that she was supposed to arrive in, when it was only the time difference. So that is important. So we have covered two things: calculating arrival time with the flying time. That is what is important. So in the question paper, you will be asked to either calculate the arrival time, the departure time with flying time, or with the DST. Same with the departure time. It's the same steps. You locate the two countries, you determine if they're in the west or in the eastern side, and then after that you will minus what you've been given. The first and second step are the same. You calculate the time difference. You look at the country in question and where is it located. It will tell you whether you minus or you divide, you add. After that, the flying time, when you're calculating the departure time, you will need to subtract. After you have determined the flying time when calculating the departure time, you will subtract. If you calculate the departure time, you will subtract the flying time. That is important. But when you calculate arrival time, you will add the flying time. And then there is the issue of the DST, or the issue of the daylight saving time. The daylight saving time is either you add or you minus. Also, again, with that one, it will depend on the country. For example, they say UK or London is practicing daylight saving time. There, what is important? Let's say you are from South Africa and you're going to London. We all know that London is at the 0 degrees. So, South Africa and London. You're from South Africa, you're going to London. What you need to do, same step. You determine the two countries. We have London, we have South Africa. London is 0 degrees, South Africa is +2. So you add, you minus, it will give you 2. So the time difference between the two countries is 2. You left South Africa at 1400 and you're going to London. So we'll say 1400 minus 2, and it will give you 12 o'clock. But then you were told that London is practicing daylight saving time. When we talk of it, daylight saving time, it means that you have 1 hour. It's 1 hour. It's when countries advance their clock 1 hour ahead. So they say London is practicing daylight saving time, meaning you have 1 hour extra. What is it that you will need to do with that 1 hour? Since you are from a country that is not practicing daylight saving time to the country that is practicing daylight saving time, you will need to add that 1 o'clock. Meaning, you left South Africa at 1400 and you arrive at London at 1300 because London is practicing daylight saving time. That is why we had to add this 1 hour. That is why you arrive at 1300, not at 12 o'clock, because you were told that London is practicing daylight saving time. But then, if the roles were reversed, you're from London and you're going to South Africa. Again, what you need to do, two countries in question. So, London is behind and South Africa is ahead. So you'll have the time difference between the two countries is 2 hours. You add, you minus it, will give you 2 hours. Then you left South Africa, you left London at 1400. What time will you arrive at South Africa? Remember, London is practicing daylight saving time. What you need to do is minus the DST first, because the country that you're going to does not practice the daylight saving time. So you'll say 1400 minus 1, and then you'll have 1300. Since you're going to the country that is ahead, you will have to add the time difference, which is 2. So it means that you arrive in South Africa at you will arrive at South Africa at 3 o'clock. So I think that is that. What is important about the DST is understand the question. Is the country in question practicing daylight saving time or not? For arrival time, you add flying time. For departure time, you subtract the flying time. That is what is important with the calculation. First step, you locate the countries in question on the map. But then in what they do now in the question paper, there you will give you the degrees, which I think it's much easier. If you are given 75 degrees east, definitely the east will tell you that the country is ahead. So that will be plus. But what must you do with the 75? Remember, at the beginning I said each time zone is 15 degrees. So what you need to do is to divide that 75 with 15 degrees, and then it will give you 5. Meaning the country is 5 hours ahead from the Greenwich Mean Time or the Universal Time Coordinate. That is important. So there is no need for you to go to the map. And I think with the degrees, it's much easier to calculate than to locate in the map, because some of the countries you won't find on the map. That is why they will give you the degrees. So if you are given degrees, divide that with 15. But you need to pay careful attention to the east and the west. If they say it's 180 degrees west, meaning that country is behind or is in the western part. But if it's 180 eastern side, that country is ahead, you will need to use the plus sign. So I think I have covered what step you need to follow when you calculate the time zone. So those are some rules that one needs to calculate. Just to go over again, the 24-hour clock is important. All places that are in the east of the GMT are ahead. All places that are in the west of the GMT are behind. We use the plus and the minus signs to determine if a country is ahead or behind. It does not refer to as a positive or negative as in mathematics. When two countries are on the same side, be west, be east, we minus because they are close by. If the two countries are on the eastern part, if the two countries are on the different parts, the other one is the east, the other one is in the west, we add. So because they are far apart, so always you must work with two countries or places at the time. If there was a connecting flight, there's no need for you to use 3 countries at the time. Use 2 countries at the time. You start with the first 2, and then from there, the second and the third. So it will be 1, 2, and then will be 2, 3. If it's South Africa, it's from South Africa to New York to Mexico. Then we'll start with South Africa and New York. Then it will be New York and Mexico. 2 countries at the time. Thank you. That's all the time I have for today.
Siyanibonga ngokufunda nathi. Siyanimema ukuthi nithamele futhi nakusasa. Ningazithola lezi zifundo ekhasini lethu lika Facebook elithi Go Digital SA Foundation na ku YouTube elithi Go Digital SA Foundation. Ziyatholakala na ku Khozi FM njalo ngoLwesine kusukela ngo9 kuya ku10 ebusuku. Ningasithola nango WhatsApp kwinamba yethu ethi 068 151 107